Hello and welcome to my home office. Happy holidays. My name is Judy Jenner, and this speech is recorded specifically for Speechpool to help my lovely colleagues and friends around the world practice interpreting. So if you're using this video for anything else, please refrain from doing so. Thank you. Now, I'm trying to get us above 500 speeches in Speechpool, so hopefully we'll get there very soon. Now, today's speech is informal, brave, and shouldn't be very hard to interpret. So there's no specific terminology. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, as a pretty big believer in women's rights and in equal rights for all genders in general, I'm not a huge fan of beauty pageants, as you may imagine. I wouldn't. If you think about it, beauty pageants are just such an outdated way of looking at women and at their worth in society. And of course, we may overanalyze it. We may all be guilty of overanalyzing beauty pageants, and maybe we should just take them as what they are, perhaps a genuine appreciation of the beauty of the female body and brains as well. However, a lot of people don't see it that way. I'm pretty torn. I do think that having grown women parade around in their swimsuits on stages for the world to gawk at is probably not particularly progressive, and probably, reinforces some of those stereotypes that we've been trying to get away from, right? That women are just evaluated based on their beauty and just valued for their physical attributes, which is certainly not a concept that very well matches today's society or its representation. That said, of course, women are absolutely gorgeous to look at, especially these spectacularly beautiful young women with great bodies and interesting personalities and great presence on stages. So this introduction gets me to my main point here, which is Miss Universe. And Miss Universe is luckily no longer owned by this really strange presidential candidate in the U.S. who's trying to run for the nomination for the Republican Party. You may have heard of him, Donald Trump. He's a little bit of a wild card. Let's just leave it at that. So Miss Universe is back in the hands of more sane owners, but really the beauty pageant itself hasn't changed in many, many years. So it still involves women parading around the live stage in front of, thousands of people, and then being broadcast live around the world. And they're parading around in their national costume and evening gown, and yes, in bathing suits, which, again, not my favorite part because I really do think it tends to objectify women a bit. But be that as it may, Miss Universe has traditionally been held in exotic locations around the world, which is pretty great for these young women who travel to some of these awesome places. And it's also been held relatively frequently right here in my hometown of Las Vegas. And this year, I think, marked the third year in recent history that Miss Universe has been here at Planet Hollywood, a hotel and casino on the Las Vegas Strip. And so Miss Universe itself is not something that I would necessarily watch because I don't really watch a lot of TV, and I don't think I would choose Miss Universe to change my TV viewing habit. But this year I made an exception because some friends of mine were actually going to be interpreters at this event, which is pretty scary if you think about interpreting on live television and at an event that's being broadcast to millions. So my hat is off to them. So I promised I would watch, and I will admit that I was also working at the same time as I was watching, but I was paying somewhat attention, and I thought it was a good use of my time to do some work while I was watching this. And I'm kind of glad I watched because something happened last week that never happened before in the history of Miss Universe, which is the following. As you know, perhaps at the end there's three beauty queens, I guess that would be the correct term, left, and one of those three is going to be crowned Miss Universe. So the announcer's job is to read the second runner-up, which is basically the person in third place, then the first runner-up, who's the person who's in second place, and then the winner, who is Miss Universe. So it is a bit confusing with the terms runner-up, second runner-up, first runner-up, and all that. But it's been done for decades, so it shouldn't be too difficult. And they give you this piece of paper where you read off the name of the winner, or at least the country. You say Miss Venezuela or Miss Egypt or whatever the case may be. So this year the presenter was Steve Harvey, who's a pretty well-known comedian here in the US, and sounded like he was doing a great job to me. But unfortunately for him, at the end, after these dreaded questions, they have this one final question that they ask each candidate why they should be Miss Universe, and most of the answers to those questions are not particularly strong, but this year Miss Philippines gave a much stronger answer than the other two. So at the end it was down to Miss Philippines and Miss Colombia. And Miss Colombia, well, Colombia in general has a history of winning or doing very well in these kind of pageants. So the actual outgoing Miss Universe from the previous year was from Colombia. So at the end, drum roll, there's two candidates on stage. It's Miss Philippines and Miss Colombia. So one of the two is going to be the winner, and the other person is going to be the first runner-up. And the second runner-up had already been announced, which was Miss USA. So the moment comes, and Steve Harvey looks at the card and he says, Miss Universe is Miss Colombia. Everybody applauds. Miss Colombia gets her crown. She waves. She's all happy. She gets her little flag from Colombia. It's all good. It's a great moment. The previous Miss Universe is saying congratulations because they're from the same country, so it's all lovely. So after about a minute or two of this, unfortunately, Steve Harvey, the announcer, comes back on stage, and he's looking pretty crestfallen. He looks pretty mortified, and he says, I'm sorry, I have to apologize. There's been a mistake. I made a mistake, and the winner is not Miss Colombia. The winner is actually Miss Philippines. And he said, I was wrong. It's written here correctly. I just read it off wrong. He just didn't do it correctly, and it happens, right? It's a human error. The whole while, unfortunately, Miss Colombia is standing there with her sash and her crown and her flowers, and she doesn't speak English, which is why she had an interpreter during the question phase. So she's really not quite sure what's going on until Miss Philippines comes to the front of the stage, and she's shocked. Like, she thought she was the first runner-up, and suddenly she's the winner. Like, she doesn't know what's going on either. And she looks very sweet, Miss Philippines, by the way. They both look just lovely. So Miss Philippines comes to the front of the stage, and Miss Colombia is still standing there looking pretty scared until basically she's finally at some point starts understanding that she isn't the winner, even though she doesn't speak the language. And from the look at her face, it becomes clear that somehow she's figured it out because she heard Miss Philippines walking and she saw her. I don't know exactly how she realized it, but so then the previous Miss Universe from 2014 comes and has to take the crown away from Miss Colombia and give it to Miss Philippines, which is a pretty mortifying moment if you think about it. So that's what happened. Miss Philippines got a crown, and it wasn't a great moment, obviously, for anybody. It's probably pretty awful if you're Miss Colombia, and it's also not great for Miss Philippines because she kind of had that amazing moment taken away from her of celebration because it was just really awkward. And Steve Harvey was mortified, as he should be. But, you know, on live television, things go wrong, mistakes happen. And unfortunately, I've been following a little bit of the aftermath on Twitter, and some Colombians are very, very upset, saying that the crown was stolen from them. But I don't think anybody stole anything. There was an interview with the judges. All of them voted for Miss Philippines, so nobody stole anything. It was just a mistake, an honest mistake, a very unfortunate one, especially at that stage, but it happened. And it happened in Vegas. And unfortunately for Steve Harvey, what happens in Vegas didn't stay in Vegas for this case at all. So thank you so much for listening.